All right. All right. Well, we've got a quorum. We've got a good group on. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. My name is amy.snider. Thank you so much for joining us today, taking some time out of your day. I hope you have a beverage or you're in a comfortable spot and you're ready to talk real estate. Obviously, purchasing a home is a very, very exciting thing, but we know it can also be a little bit daunting. So our goal today is really just to give you a solid foundation of information and knowledge so that you feel confident getting started on your home buying journey. Of course, we're not going to be able to cover every detail. So if you have questions that come up, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, which you should see, and we'll save some time at the end to cover those items. And of course, we're happy to set up additional time for personal conversations after this. All right, so let's dig in. So a little bit about us. So I'm a realtor with Compass. Compass is actually the #1 brokerage in the US, as well as the #1 brokerage in Los Angeles, and actually did 3 times as much in volume last year as the #2 brokerage in LA County. So by working with Compass agents, you are working with people that have access to more listings and more buyers than other agents, which is a good thing. Why is that? Well, one key differentiator for Compass is really technology. We have a proprietary technology program, or platform, I should say, that really gives us tools that other people that don't have access to and delivers better outcomes for our clients. Our group personally, we were ranked as the top 1.5% of agents across the United States the last 2 years. And really, honestly, these accolades and sales volume numbers are not as important as the outcomes for clients. So far this year, we have saved our buyer clients $345,000 in price reductions or credits while in escrow. We've negotiated on their behalf, which we're really proud of. And also, we have a great track record of winning bidding wars. So 86% of our buyer clients get either their first or second offer accepted, which is pretty unique in a competitive market like we've had the last few years, where people are writing offer after offer before getting an acceptance. So we're really focused on delivering good outcomes. I've personally built my business largely working with buyers. So we have a proven process on how to get folks into houses that they are and get a great outcome. Just one recent success story. Some clients we worked with earlier this year, they were working with another agent for 2 years and had written 7 offers with them with no success. Within 6 weeks of our first meeting, they had keys to their new house. So that's just one example. We've also recently gotten somebody into their dream home off market because they weren't finding anything on the MLS. We also just recently won a bidding war where our client wasn't even the highest offer in price, but we were still chosen. And so just a few examples of how we're serving our clients. So today, as I mentioned, I'm Amy Snider. I'm an agent. I live on the west side of LA. I'm in a neighborhood called Del Rey. Before here, I lived in Venice, and we work all over LA, but I do live on the west side. And I love selling real estate. I've always loved real estate, but prior to selling real estate, I was actually in marketing, digital marketing and consulting. I have 2 young daughters, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I have a rescue pup named Baxter and a husband. He lives with us too. And that's a little bit about me. So I also have with me today Carly Steinberg, a realtor on my team, who will introduce herself, and Eric Eisenberg, who's one of the best mortgage brokers on the planet and just all around great guy. So you'll get to meet him as well. Now I'll hand it off to Carly to tell you a little bit more about herself and get started on the content.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm Carly Steinberg. Thank you again so much for taking time out of your Wednesday afternoon to join us. I was born and raised in Los Angeles in Encino, and I graduated from UCLA. Go Bruins. So I'm a full Angelino through and through. I have a background in social media and marketing, and I currently live in Sherman Oaks with my boyfriend and our 2 Cocker Spaniel pups. And I am really excited to work with first-time home buyers, so let's get into it. All right, so the big question, to buy or rent? So as real estate agents and advisors, our job is never to convince you to buy. We instead want you to be knowledgeable and make the best decision for you. And of course, we recognize that everyone has different circumstances. So, when to rent? If you think that you're likely to want to move again in a year or two and you don't want an investment property, then buying probably doesn't make sense. If you want to avoid long-term financial commitment. So, the rule of thumb is that you shouldn't buy if you don't see yourself there for at least 5 years. You want to stay in the home long enough that appreciation will outweigh those transaction costs. If you don't want to worry about maintenance, then you probably don't want to buy. The benefit of renting is that if there's an issue, you can just call the landlord and they will fix it at no cost to you. And then lastly, if you have limited financial resources or a lack of financial stability, renting is probably a smarter decision. All right, so when to buy? If you have a stable income, there are a lot of recurring expenses as well as those fun surprise expenses that come with homeownership, and we'll get into that later. If you plan on staying in the same location for a long time. Owning a home gives you stability and eliminates the risk that you'll have to move out because your landlord wants to sell or is raising the rent on you. If you want to customize your living space, owning a home gives you control over your living situation. You'll have the ability to renovate, make additions, etc. And these are things that you just can't do when you rent. And then lastly, a big one, if you want to build equity and enjoy tax benefits. Owning allows you to build wealth through appreciation. So for example, my parents' home has almost tripled in value since they bought it in 1999. Home ownership is an investment. You can leverage your home for other financial needs in the future, such as education, starting a business, or retirement. And then there are also plenty of tax benefits that Eric will get into later. So now I'm going to pass it on to Amy to discuss the state of the market.
Awesome. Okay, so a little bit about the market. So first of all, I am a firm believer that you cannot time the market. So the right time or the best time to buy is always going to be when it makes sense for you as an individual. So when we talk about market dynamics and market stats and whatnot, it's not to convince you to do one thing or another. It's really just to make you feel empowered, to make you feel informed, to give you confidence in your decision, and also to just set expectations about the reality of the situation. And we know that the housing market has been in the headlines a lot lately, and sometimes those headlines can be misleading. So I did just want to take a minute to break down exactly what we're seeing. Like any other market, housing market conditions are driven largely by supply and demand. Due to a variety of factors here in Los Angeles, we consistently have pretty low housing supply. It's not super easy to build here. There's certain factors that create less houses for sale than there are people that want to be here and buy them. And this is what drives our high prices here, but it also is what drives faster rates of appreciation than you see in other parts of the country, and why so many people are able to build wealth by owning real estate here in Los Angeles. So a little step back, during the pandemic, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates to extremely low levels. This created a huge increase in demand for housing across the board and led to record levels of price appreciation. Last year, in 2022, in a response to inflation, the Federal Reserve began pretty quickly increasing rates in an attempt to kind of cool things off. And this did actually reduce buyer demand overall, having slightly higher rates. But what it's also done is limit supply. You see now 9 out of 10 mortgage owners, or mortgage holders, I should say, in the United States are locked in at a rate that's much lower than what's available on the market today, which means they're hesitant to sell because that would mean trading up into a higher interest rate. So we have a lack of houses coming on the market, and that is constricted supply is keeping prices steady. We did see a bit of a dip in prices, and then we've seen some month-over-month gains, but in general, it's holding pretty steady. So what does that mean for a buyer in Los Angeles. What we have in terms of homes on the market right now is still well below what we would call normal or pre-pandemic inventory levels, but it is higher than we had at the same time last year. So that means there are more options for buyers. And we also are seeing less competitive multiple offer situations. They're still happening, but it's slightly less frequent. And also they're not going as crazy over or as competitive as we saw the last few years. So that means there's more leverage for buyers to negotiate on things like price or terms. Things are staying on the market a little bit longer. And so these are all good signs for buyers right now. But the reality is we still don't have tons of inventory, and that market crash that people were waiting for never really materialized, and we don't really see it happening anytime soon. So that is a little bit about the market, and I will now hand it back over to Carly.
All right, so let's get into the home buying process. So we've broken down the process into 6 key steps: finding your team, financing, property search, offers and negotiations, the escrow process, and being a homeowner. So first, let's discuss finding your team and selecting an agent. All right, so one of the most important decisions that you make is who you choose to be your agent. Believe it or not, there are 1.6 million agents in the United States, but that doesn't mean you should just go with anyone. Your agent is going to be your partner, your advisor, your confidant, and your advocate during one of the biggest financial transactions of your life. So you want it to be someone you trust and someone whose advice that you value. Also, you're going to be spending a lot of time together during this process and hopefully beyond. So it should be someone you enjoy spending time with and talking on the phone with late at night. You should ask yourself these questions when interviewing agents. Are they familiar with the market and the neighborhoods you want to be in? Do they understand and can they explain the contracts and what it all means to you? Do they have access to multiple experts and resources to help you throughout the process? Do they have positive reviews and come recommended? Do they have strong relationships in the agent community? And how is their communication style? Are they responsive? Overall, impressions absolutely matter in this industry, and your agent is a representation of you to both the sellers and their agent. So you absolutely want to make sure that they're putting you in the best possible light and advocating effectively for your best interests. Now I will pass it back to Amy to debunk some common myths.
Thank you, Carly, and apologize for the slide fumbles. This is our first webinar, and I'm getting the hang of this technology thing, but I'm really good at selling houses. Okay, so to debunk a couple common myths, these are things that we hear from clients all the time, and we just wanted to cover, a counterpoint to some of these misconceptions. So one, a lot of times people think that it's in their best interest to just go directly to the listing agent. They don't need buyer representation. They're just going to go to the open house and they'll ask the listing agent to represent them. There are a few reasons why we don't recommend this approach. First of all, the listing agent has an existing relationship and a contractual obligation to the seller. So even if they represent you, their loyalty and their long-term relationship and priorities are going to be with that seller. And so you want somebody who's going to advocate for your best interest and be looking out for you. If you are going through a divorce or a lawsuit, God forbid, would you look for the representation on the other side to represent you? Probably not. Also, I think any situation where the agent is tied to you for a specific deal or a specific property, the incentives are a little misaligned because they're going to want to get you to buy that house rather than buy the right house for you or get the right outcome for you. And so I don't recommend that. Also, in an environment like today where there is competition for listings, typically listing agents and sellers are looking for buyers that are well prepared, that are serious, that are pre-qualified, that understand, that have an agent that's going to guide them to the closing table. And so you walking in unrepresented doesn't always set the best impression. Second myth is that I can find my house on my own. I don't need an agent, which, I mean, obviously we live in the age of the internet. And so we all have more information accessible on our phones than we did at any point in history prior to today. So sure, you probably will be able to find access to properties and the ones you want on Zillow. But in a market like this, where we have very little inventory, a lot of sales are happening off market in Los Angeles. So properties may never hit the market. And we've sold over $20 million of properties off market. And the way you have access to those is by working with an agent who's well connected and well networked to have access to those off market properties, and is also doing the legwork to find and create inventory for you. The third myth here is that I just, I'm not in a rush. I'm not quite ready. So I'm going to wait until I find a house I like, and then I'll get an agent, and then I'll meet with the lender and get pre-approved. This is not a great approach because of how quickly things move. It's not uncommon for a house to get listed on a Thursday or Friday, have the first viewings at the weekend open houses, and offers are due 5 p.m. on Monday. And so if you don't have your ducks in a row, like, you're just going to miss out on that opportunity. Also, especially here in LA, we have a lot of people that are self-employed, or they have sort of unique financial situations, and there are certain things you're going to want to do to put yourself in a position to succeed at homeownership. And by meeting with a lender and an agent earlier, you can do that legwork to put yourself in a position to buy. So in my opinion, it's never too early to start those conversations. And lastly, the last myth we have on here is that you need a 20% down payment to purchase a home. And if you can't save that money, it's just not possible for you. And that is really a misconception. There are loan programs for as little as 3.5% to 5% down. The average down payment amount that people are putting down is well below 20%. So there are options. And if that is what's holding you back, definitely recommend chatting with a lender and understanding, what's possible. So along those lines, we're going to talk about setting a budget. So this is one of the key first steps when you are jumping into the home purchasing process. Obviously, purchasing a home is a great investment. It can be a real wealth builder, but it is a big financial commitment. And it pretty much always feels a little uncomfortable for first-time home buyers to take that jump. And so setting a budget for yourself and respecting that budget throughout the process is important. And we want you to think about that both in terms of one-time expenses and recurring expenses. So in terms of one-time expenses, you're going to have your down payment amount. That's the amount of cash you're putting towards the purchase, the rest being financed. You're going to have closing costs associated with the purchase. So that's typically, most of those are associated with the loan, but you also have escrow fees, notary fees, there's fees associated with the purchase. You're going to have an appraisal fee, which you'll need to do if you're getting a loan. And then, of course, you have home inspections, which we'll talk about in more detail. But this is a really important part of the process, and we recommend you doing as many inspections as you feel the need to. And that is always money well spent. You spend a little now to hopefully save you a headache in the future. And of course, moving expenses. And then in terms of a recurring or ongoing basis, the most obvious is going to be your mortgage payments and your property taxes. You're also going to have home insurance. And this has become a little bit more challenging as of late in California. A lot of the insurance companies are no longer offering home insurance in California. So there's still lots of great options, and we haven't had any real issues here, but depending on the property or the location, it can take a little bit longer or cost a little bit more. So it's something to consider. Next is HOA fees. So if you're purchasing a condo, or if you're in a certain subdivision, if there's amenities, then you may have homeowners associations, and those may have fees that you're paying on a monthly basis. And then lastly, you're going to have home maintenance and repairs, as Carly mentioned earlier. So a financial advisor I work with usually recommends that you budget about 1% to 2% of the home value per year for like recurring maintenance and taking care of the home. So that's something to think about as well as like a rainy day kind of emergency fund. So taking all this into account, we recommend you really start to think about what portion of your monthly income are you comfortable allocating towards housing, and set that budget for yourself, and then understanding what savings you have available for this purchase, and take that information with you into your meeting with the lender, and then they'll help you translate that into what that means in terms of a purchase price and a budget for your home search. So on that note, I'll hand it off to Eric Eisenberg to introduce himself and talk a little bit about financing.
Okay, great. Hey everybody, I'm Eric Eisenberg. I'm with Expert Home Loans. That's my company. And here's my contact information below if you want to take a screenshot or reach out to Amy or Carly anytime. About me, I was recently one of the top 50 mortgage brokers in the USA out of over 35,000. So I'm very happy, to hit that milestone. But more importantly, about the way I run my business, I'm one point of contact, so I do everything myself. People think I'm a madman the way I do things, but I'm very meticulous about how I handle my clients' documents, finances, and advice throughout the process, and every little detail matters to me. And I'm relationship-based and only referrals, so you'll never see my company advertised on a billboard or Zillow or anything. And what I try to do is make my experience your advantage throughout the process, over thousands of transactions and 25 years in the industry. Next slide, Carly. Sorry, I don't. So I want to just touch, very surface level about what lenders look for. I work with 88 different lenders, small, medium, and large size banks. And ultimately, it's going to come down to three things: your credit, your income, and your assets. And I call these the three different buckets, right? And just because you have good credit, if you don't have enough income, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to qualify for the ideal loan. Or just because you have enough money in the bank for assets, if you don't have enough, good enough credit or good enough income. So we look at these three things separately, and these all help you out when qualifying. So with a credit score, there are programs with a minimum of 620 credit score. Now, those are not going to be the optimal financing programs, but we can get you into a home with that. But ideally, you want to be at a 740 or above. Still, don't get deterred. If you're at a 680 or 620, we can still get it done for you. As far as income, I always say this, there's a difference between what you qualify for and what you could afford comfortably, which Amy also touched on. You want to make sure that your home payments are what you could afford comfortably. But as far as we're concerned, we want to look that your income's about double what your monthly minimum obligations are with your car loans, student loans, minimum credit card payments, and your future mortgage payment. So always two different things. Some people that can qualify cannot afford a home, and some people that can not qualify can afford a home. So what I try to do is get people who can afford a home qualified with an affordable payment. And last thing, as Amy and Carly also touched on, you do not need 20% down. You could do $1,070,000 in Los Angeles County with 3.5% or 5% down payment. Now, everybody, I always say, your uncle will tell you, stay away from PMI, stay away from PMI. Truly, the market will typically outpace, and the appreciation of the market will outpace your savings.
Can you explain what PMI is for people that might not know?
Yeah, so PMI is mortgage insurance. So basically, the mortgage banks will require you to get insurance on their money if they're lending you more than 80% of your home's value or your purchase price. So if you're going to be buying a home for $1 million and putting down 5%, they want their money insured, the banks do, just in case. They always look at what happens if they foreclose. That's the bank's perspective. And they want to make sure that their money is insured, that they're not going to take a loss. But with PMI, it used to be about 1% of the loan amount. So it would be like an extra 1% of your in almost interest, you could call it, or look at it the same way. But right now we're getting PMI for as low as 0.19 or 0.26. So depending on your credit, we could get you some very discounted great rates on PMI. And I always say, don't look at one particular part of a transaction. Take a couple steps back, look at the entire transaction, and then see if it makes some sense for you. Can we hit the next slide?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, different loan options. So I don't expect you to understand what all this means, but there are different options. So I'm going to ask any clients, and if you're whichever lender you're working with, whether it's me or someone else, because there's a ton of amazing lenders out there, you want to make sure they have different options. Now, certain lenders only have a few of these different programs, and you might fit better into another one. So as Amy mentioned, a lot of self-employed clients. I personally put a lot of self-employed clients into bank statement loans, for reasons that they write off a good portion of their income with tax returns. Veterans typically go into VA loans, investment properties into debt service. So there's always options. And what I try to do is ask as many questions as possible, get to know client very well. Everything that's not on the application, I like to ask what your goals are, how long you're going to be in the property, if you're going to have kids in the future, relocate in the future, all these questions. And then I could help advise on all of your loan options and then give a recommendation on which loan program would be best for you and why. Ultimately comes down to your decision. And next one. Okay. Financial benefits of homeownership. There are so many. I could run through this list for hours probably, but here's a few that people don't typically keep in mind, because when I speak to first-time home buyers or people looking to buy a home, they're typically worried about the monthly payments, and they're comparing a $3,000 a month rent payment to a $5,000 a month mortgage payment, and it's not apples to apples over here. Now, the biggest thing that people don't pay attention to is the first $750,000 of your mortgage is tax deductible. So all the interest, not obviously you pay principal and interest, but all the interest on that $750,000 is tax deductible. So a great call to make is to your accountant and say, hey, if we bought a home and financed $1 million or $800,000, how much money would we be saving taxes? And then you can reach out to me or your accountant to come up with strategies if your monthly obligations are going up significantly, to come up with strategies to bring down your tax obligations throughout the year. So you will not be getting just a huge chunk back with taxes. And there's a couple different ways to do that. Another thing is your monthly payments include paying down your principal. So every time you make a monthly payment, unlike rent, where you pay September rent on September 1 and October rent on October 1, you're paying the previous month's interest. So with a mortgage. So if you're paying a September payment, you're paying August interest. Now this amortizes. So over time, as you continue to make payments, you owe less money and you're paying less and less interest on every month. It doesn't seem like a lot at first because that's when your balance is at its highest point. But as you go over time, this does add up, and that's how people build equity. And it's one of the best vehicles to find, financial freedom for you is having equity in your home. Real estate appreciates a lot over time. Now, it doesn't mean that this year it's going to be one amount and next year it's not going to be the next amount. We've all been there. I personally bought a home in 2006. I spent, but now it's up in value. And over time, your real estate will appreciate. So what Carly mentioned about having a 5-year outlook, I always recommend that as well. Everything is case by case. So there's nothing like set in stone, like you need to be here for 5 years, but that's a very good, overall recommendation. It'll appreciate over time, and it typically will outpace a savings. So if you're looking to save $25,000 a year so you can buy $1 million home, that $1 million home will probably go up at a rate higher than 2.5% a year on average. So if you can get a home and you're financially stable to get a home, I always say best time is today to do so. Now, and then I just touched on the appreciation over the savings rate. So those are a couple of things that you should keep in mind. Obviously, I always say everything is case by case. So if you do have any questions or want to talk about your specific finances, always feel free to hit me up. You could have a family member helping you out with money. You could have a side job going on that's not reported on your taxes, tips for a waiter, things like that. So let me know your exact circumstances, and then I could always recommend what the best program and the best path into homeownership is for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Cool. Of course.
I think that's a great point. Like we say that 5 years as a rule of thumb. We've all seen appreciation in, you know, less than that. We've had people be very successful selling in 1 to 2 years. And then to Eric's point, if you bought in 2006 or 2007, right before the Great Recession, obviously you had down years. So we use that as a general rule of thumb. But it's not like a bank account where you should be checking your balance every day. There's always options. So again, if there's a specific scenario, it may make sense. We have a lot of people that maybe buy a house to live in it for 1 to 2 years, and then they move out, but they keep it as an income property. And there's really a lot of benefits to that as well. So there's different ways to think about it. So we're going to jump in now to the property search. So once you've met with the lender, once you have a pre-approval and you have a general sense of your budget, then we're really going to start the shopping process. And oftentimes we have clients come to us with like, I want to be in this neighborhood, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200 square feet, whatever it is. But we do like to take a step back and really understand your why for buying, and also sort of your vision for your life in this property, because it helps us throughout the process. So we like to think about things like your lifestyle. Are you really career focused and access to your office is the most important thing? Or perhaps you have hobbies, you're a surfer, or you like to hike, or you like to bird watch, and proximity to those things matter. Maybe you're more of a homebody and really having a comfortable place where you feel like a sanctuary at home or you can entertain at home is important. So we're gonna dig in on that and understand sort of what your vision is for this house. We're also going to think about your life stage. So again, thinking about what's going to work for you right now and for the next few years. So do you have kids, or are you hoping to start a family? Do you want to have roommates in the near term? Do you, for example, have, parents that you want to be able to house? These are things that we're going to talk about so we understand what's going to make the most sense. Also, we talk about location. So again, location matters, obviously. In real estate, they say location, location, location. We live in LA, which is a massive sprawling city. It's a series of cities. And so a lot of times people think they want to be in one area, but for whatever reason, they need to consider other areas. So I think it's important to have an open mind and to think about, again, the why behind the purchase and what you want your life in this home to look like. And your realtor should be able to advise you on what locations and neighborhoods are going to make sense based on your priorities and your budget. And very often you may have to consider looking in different areas, just because, again, we're in a low inventory environment, and you may have to be a little bit flexible on the location front. Everybody's going to have a different set of priorities. Maybe, I have to be in the zip code and nothing else matters, or, you're more worried about it being the right home and you're flexible on location. So these are the types of things we're going to think about. But obviously we don't want you spending too much time in the car commuting or those types of things. So I always advise clients to think about the triangle: live, work, and play. So where do you live? Where are you going to go to work every day? And then what are the places you like to recreate? Where is your play? And making sure that's like a reasonable distance, and considering traffic patterns and all of that. So once we've gone through all of that, we will have a conversation. We'll ask lots of questions. We'll kind of probe you on the reasoning behind some of your needs. Then we'll set up your search. And we like to do this as a process of elimination. So it's really easy to just kind of scroll Instagram or Zillow and look for the beautiful pictures and then go see those houses. But what we recommend is more of a process of elimination, where we look at all the properties that might work for you and then eliminate to make sure that you're not missing out on anything. And we have a platform within Compass called Compass Collections, which is a great interactive platform that allows you to see listings as they hit the market. It also includes off-market listings that are exclusive to Compass, and we can collaborate in real time on those listings and narrow it down. So we'll look, some we'll only ever look at online, some houses we may drive by, and then lastly, some we're going to have to go see in person, which is the really fun part. So I'll hand it off to Carly to chat about that.
Okay, so this is the most exciting part. It is my favorite part, and one of, I think, my favorite parts of the job is getting to see all the amazing houses in Los Angeles. So yeah, super exciting. So there are a couple of ways that you're going to view homes, either through open houses or through private showings. which will help to set up for you. And we always recommend seeing the house more than once and at different times of the day so you can really get to know the area. So when viewing properties, you want to keep in mind, again, first impressions matter, especially in this competitive market. So just like you're evaluating the house, you are also being evaluated as potential buyers. So here are a few tips. I'm sure you all either have or have heard of the Ring camera. So in this day and age, everyone has recording devices, so you want to make sure to save those strategy and feedback conversations for later. My aunt was actually in the process of selling her home, and she would always tell me about the ridiculous conversations she'd hear from her Ring doorbell. So don't point out the negatives. The last thing you want to do is to offend the seller. Keep it positive. The listing agent is looking for a buyer that they believe will be easy to work with and who will ultimately close. So what should you be looking for during these home tours? Obviously, look at the neighborhood. Again, we recommend driving by at different times of the day to evaluate traffic noise, airplanes, etc. And then pay attention to the neighbors. Do they take care of their homes? Are they friendly? And then when you're looking at the homes, really try and remove those rose-colored glasses. As real estate agents, there is a reason that we stage homes. It has a really big impact in affecting the vibe of the house. So when you're viewing a home, really try and look past that and understand if you're loving the house itself, or is it just styled in a way that's making you excited? And then lastly, really pay attention to the fundamentals. Is the layout going to work? Is the size appropriate? Is there storage? Is the home well maintained and taken care of? Does it have air conditioning? Are there signs of structural issues or deferred maintenance? Your agent should help point out these types of things that might not be immediately obvious. The 85% rule. Believe it or not, selecting a home requires compromise. Even people who build their dream homes look back and wish that they can change some things. No property will ever be perfect. So you want to learn to be comfortable with that 85%. Ask yourself, are the non-negotiables met? And are the things that you don't like about it fixable? You really can't wait for perfection or you might miss out on a really great home. So how do you know when it's the one? You'll know it's the one if you can see yourself living there and you're excited about it. Plus, you would be really bummed to hear it sold to someone else. And sometimes when you know, you know. So you found the one. How do you make an offer? I'll pass it over to Amy to discuss the process.
Awesome. Thanks, Carly. Okay, so if you found a house that you want to make yours or condo or property, then we'll get started to make an offer. There's a few things we have to have in place before you make an offer. So first, you want to have the ability to wire your initial deposit. So if you get an accepted offer, the initial deposit is due within a few days, and that's typically 3% of the purchase price. So you want to make sure you have those funds easily accessible. You're going to need a letter from the lender if you're getting a mortgage, and not all letters are created equal. So we don't want a pre-qual from some website that just printed out. We want you to have actually spoken to a lender. There's a name and there's a phone number on that letter of somebody who's reviewed your file and can speak to your qualifications to get that loan. Actually, we've seen a big uptick in the last couple of years of people actually getting fully underwritten pre-writing offers, so that the loan approval is actually pretty much almost there, with the exception of the property and some latest documents, and that makes your offer that much more compelling. And then lastly is proof of funds. So you're going to need a bank statement or several statements or a letter from your accountant or bank that shows that you have the cash available for the down payment amount and the closing costs, or if you're running a cash offer for the entire purchase price. And then we will put together the offer. So in the state of California, the offer is actually the purchase agreement, and it's a long document, and it's got a lot of legalese in it. So again, when we're working with buyers, we like to share that and review it prior to home shopping, so that you're not in the heat of the moment trying to make sense of this very long document. But the key points in there's really 5 things that are negotiable that go into every offer. So that's the price, the purchase price, the close date, which is when escrow will close, final funds will be sent, the deed gets transferred into your name, you get the keys. And then the possession date, which can sometimes be different. So a lot of times sellers would like to stay in the house for a period of time after they close, so they can move or get their next property or whatnot. So that is sometimes negotiable. And then the contingencies. So a contingency is basically an out of the contract. There are certain criteria that need to be met or things that need to happen in order for the transaction to go through. And if they're not, you can leave and get your deposit back. So the three main contingencies for a buyer are your investigation, which includes all of your due diligence, inspections, reading disclosures, etc. Loan, which is your ability to get financing, and appraisal, which is related but different, which is a third-party assessment of value. And then lastly is inclusions and exclusions. So typically everything that's attached to the house, they say, you know, if you flip the house upside down and shook it, anything that wouldn't fall out is included in the sale by default, and things that are freestanding are typically not. But again, everything's negotiable, so that's something that will be defined explicitly in the offer. So, okay, so when it's time to write the offer, this is where it's really important to have a great agent that can help you, guide you on the strategy for putting together your offer. A lot of that is related to collecting intel and information, and that starts well before this point. Buyer's agent should be building rapport with the listing agent and trying to get as much information as possible in terms of what the seller is looking for, what the competition looks like, is there going to be an offer deadline, are they expecting multiple offers, how are they going to handle counters and negotiations, etc. Is there anything in particular that the sellers want that would make you stand out? So your agent will do all of that. They will also do a CMA, or a comparative market analysis, which will educate you on what similar homes have sold for or are selling for, to give you a sense of market value. And based on all of those discussions, what you feel comfortable with, etc., you'll put together an offer and submit it. And then a few different things could happen. Best case scenario, it gets accepted. Great. Worst case scenario, it gets rejected or you get no response. Most likely you get some type of counter where the seller responds and maybe alters some of the terms. And it can be a one-to-one negotiation, or you can get something called a seller multiple counter if there are multiple buyers competing for a property. In that instance, very often it becomes a bit of a blind auction where buyers are asked to come back with their best and final offer. This is so important to have a great agent with great communication during this process, not only to hold your hand through it and make sure you have the information you need and feel supported, but also to get as much information from the other side as possible and to really hopefully influence this process for your benefit. So that's a little bit about that, but let's just assume that you were successful and your offer is accepted. And then what does the process look like from there? I'll hand it off to Carly.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the escrow process. So once we have an accepted offer, we open escrow. So what is escrow? Escrow is a neutral third party that distributes funds and manages a lot of the paperwork related to the transaction. So the first step is that you, the buyer, will wire over 3% of the purchase price into the escrow account. And this will start the due diligence period. So the due diligence period is really your opportunity to look into and understand the property. Like Amy discussed, you have contingencies related to this so that if you find anything you don't like, you have the opportunity to cancel. During this time, we'll review the disclosures and the reports from the city and the sellers. We'll also start to do inspections on the property, which your agent will help you to set up. So typically we start with a general inspection, which covers all major systems, a termite inspection, and just a heads up, most properties in California do have termites, and a sewer scope inspection. And then there's a variety of other inspections that we might do depending on the property or the circumstances. So based on what we find in those inspections and the disclosures, we do have the opportunity to renegotiate to either have the seller fix the issues, reduce the purchase price, or give credits. And your agent will help you determine which is the best option. And again, back to home insurance, this is a great time to start looking for that. And you'll definitely want to start that process early on and get quotes that you're comfortable with. So while you're doing your due diligence, your lender is working through the loan process and making sure you're fully underwritten. During this time, they're also evaluating the property, and the key in this is the appraisal. So what is an appraisal? An appraisal is when the bank will have a third-party person evaluate the value of the property to make sure it's either at or above what you agreed to pay. Typically, your agent will meet with the appraiser to help guide them by giving them a packet that justifies the purchase price, and then this is just to eliminate the risk of an appraisal gap. All right, contingency removal. So once all of that is done, we remove contingencies. At this point, the deposit goes hard. So that means that if you back out, the seller has the right to go after that deposit. Next, you'll do what's called a final walkthrough, and this is just to make sure the property is in the same condition and any agreed upon repairs are complete. Lastly, you'll sign the documents, the bank will send their money, you'll send your money, and we can close escrow. And boom, just like that, you have a house. I'll pass it to Amy to discuss homeownership and beyond.
Amazing. We did it. We bought a house in less than an hour. Pretty impressive. Okay, so now you have the keys. You are excited to be a new homeowner. A few things you don't want to forget. Obviously, you're going to update your mailing address as you would with any move. We also always recommend that we rekey or change the locks on the house. You'll get the keys from the seller, but you just never know if a handyman or housekeeper or house guest has a key. So we always recommend that for a security perspective. And then you'll want to establish your regular home maintenance schedule. So things like changing the HVAC filters, getting your sewer hydrojetted if applicable, cleaning your gutters. These are things that if you don't do on a regular basis can really cause you a bigger expense and bigger headache down the road. So you want to set a schedule and a system to get those things done. And also start a home improvement plan. So again, your agent and your home inspector can help advise you based on all your due diligence on what these things should look like. And you can start that plan and start saving to support that over time. And then you get to start making it your own. You know, you put your art up, you maybe make small changes, do some landscaping, whatever you feel like, because it's your house and you can get to know the neighbors, etc. Just really enjoy your new home. And if you have an agent like us, this will just be the start of your relationship. Again, we really pride ourselves on not being transactional. We want to be your agent for life. So if you have a question, you need a referral, or you just want to chat, whether it's a week after close, a month after close, a year after close, like we're here as a resource and an advisor for everything that relates to your home and on an ongoing basis. So that is our content. We will take a few minutes to answer questions. If you have a question that we didn't cover or something that's top of mind, please drop it in the Q&A box. A couple of things that we were asked. So somebody asked, what happens if the house doesn't appraise? So you're agreed to pay a certain price, the appraisal comes back below that price. So in this scenario, if you have an appraisal contingency, then you have the ability to exit the transaction based on that. And so you can choose to do that, or you can use that as a leverage to renegotiate with the seller to actually bring that purchase price down in line with the appraisal. If that doesn't work, or if you don't want to do that, there's also often options within the loan. So Eric can speak, basically, the loan product will require a certain loan to value ratio. And it may be okay that there's a little bit of a gap, or you may be able to switch to a different product that allows for that, or you may have to bring additional funds to the table to cover that gap. So there's a lot of different options if that scenario does come up. As Carly touched on, we tried to mitigate that risk by being really involved in the appraisal process and putting together like a packet with the comps, with all the features of the home and a commentary on the other sales. Oftentimes appraisers might not have seen the comp, so we are able to provide additional insight into why this house may sell for more or less than the one down the street, for example. And then there are some situations where you can challenge the appraisal or go with another lender to get a new appraisal. So there's always options if that scenario arises. And then we had another question about, is cash always king? Do cash offers always win? So this is an interesting question. We are seeing more cash offers across the board lately, which makes sense because of the interest rate environment. When we had, you know, near zero interest rates, it was everybody wanted a loan, even if they had all the cash. But now we do see a bit more cash offers, but really, to the seller, it doesn't necessarily make a difference. They get the same money at the end anyway. The reason cash is attractive is because there's less risk. There's less parties involved. They don't have to, the loan approval process isn't applicable. The appraisal isn't usually applicable. So that's why it's really compelling. They can also usually close quicker. But as I mentioned earlier, I think lenders have gotten much better at competing. And so folks like Eric can move so fast that it's the same as a cash offer. And also if you're fully underwritten and they can put that case forward about why your loan is like a slam dunk, then the value there is not as compelling. And from my personal experience, most sellers don't want to leave money on the table. So if the finance offer is higher than the cash offer, in most scenarios, I feel like sellers are prone to go with the higher number, assuming that's a well-qualified buyer and a well put together offer. Okay, I don't think we have any other questions. Carly, Eric, anything else you wanted to say?
Carly?
No, I don't think so on my end. Again, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out anytime. On the next slide, I think we're offering complimentary buyer consultations. So you can just scan this with your phone and book some time with us. And then we'll be sending out this recording and just information about this as well. So if you don't grab your phone in time, do not worry.
Yes. If there's any specific scenarios or specific markets or things you have questions on, like feel free to reach out offline, and these 30-minute sessions, we can dig in on your particular scenario. Anything else, Eric, you wanted to add?
No, I think you guys did such a great job on this. And I just want to add one thing, because I know you won't talk about this, Amy, and how great you are at your job, and Carly as well, obviously. But one client reached out to me about Amy and said that she stayed like an hour late at the open house to talk to the agent, and they ended up getting the house because of that. So they seem like little things, but these things do matter when you, and save you money along the way and help you out during the process. So I think it's just very important for people to understand that. And I think this went great. Amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And same goes for Eric. If you want a lender that's going to call the listing agent and talk you up. And so it does, you know, whether it's us or whatever team you choose to guide you in this process, you want to make sure it's somebody who cares and somebody who's going to fight for you and put in that extra effort, because it absolutely does make a difference in your ability to accomplish your goals and feel taken care of and have it be a positive experience for you, because it can get stressful at times. So it's important to have a good team in your corner.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for taking the time today. We really, really appreciate you taking an hour out of your busy day to chat with us. And if there's ever anything we can do to help, now you know where to find us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.